Hey y'all, it's me. The glow up is. We are in, y'all. This is so awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So we are at episode 16. This is episode 16. I cannot believe it. God is so good. He's so amazing. I am definitely excited about the growth, how we're just growing together, y'all. We doing this thing. We are growing together and we are going to glow. Okay. We gotta let our light shine. You see what I'm saying? I don't know about y'all, but I had a crazy trying week. But at the same time, listen, I'm growing through it. I'm going through it and I'm growing through it and I'm gonna glow through it. You get what I'm saying? I'm glowing because of it. So it's so necessary for us to go through the things that we go through sometimes, right? Because sometimes we learn things the hard way. I don't know about y'all, but listen, I've been really thinking about the promises of God. I've really been thinking about what has God promised you? What are some things that God has told you that He wants you to do? Like you. Yes, you. Um, I'm reminded, and I wanted to remind somebody else, man, on today. There is a ram in the bush. Do you hear me? There is a ram in the bush. There's always a ram in the bush. And when I say that, I'm saying this because where there's a will, there's a way. And even though sometimes we don't see it that way, right? It's always a way out. Like God always creates a way of escape, whether or not if it's mentally, physically, or emotionally, right? It's up to us to receive it. It's up to us whether or not we want to take it. It's up to us to decide on whether or not we want to accept this ram in the bush. But listen, God wants to see where our hearts are. He wants to see what it is that we're doing. He wants to see what it is that is in our hearts, our actions. He wants to show us, right? Us. He wants us to see us. He wants us to become the best versions of us that we can be. And the way that he does that, right? He does it in an everyday fashion. So when we become so intentional with who he is and what it is that he wants us to do, and we begin to be obedient, right? Because the reality is, right, is that sometimes we get so caught up in the world that we lose our focus. We lose our focus. But not only do we lose our focus, but we get so wrapped up in the promises of God and we're doing everything right. Okay. And I'm talking to those people who is really intentional with this thing. But God blessed me with this. And I'm gonna give you a word on this because listen, it blessed me. So I want to make sure that it blessed you. Because look, life be life, but God is still out here, God. Okay. And it's just he's just really refreshed me on this week because he had to check me and my emotions and my feelings because sometimes y'all those feelings and I talked about this last week, validating our feelings. Sometimes we have to be mindful of what we're listening to and who we're listening to because people will make you feel some type of way and they will validate your feelings to make you feel like you doing the things right, but it's really wrong. Sometimes wrong feels right and that ain't cool. So anyway, um I'm talking to those tonight who have a promise and who's really literally been intentional with what it is that you know that God has been calling you to do. God has blessed you with the promise. You are in the season of receiving the promises that God has for you. And those promises have now been fulfilled for you. And maybe the promises haven't yet, but hold on, they're coming. But you this may also bless you too, right? For those who have a promise that hasn't even come yet, but it's coming. But you're doing all of the things that you're supposed to be doing right because you're prepping for this thing. You're preparing for this thing. And you ready, you TTG, you trained to go. You see what I'm saying? I know that's right. Me too. I'm trained to go. I'm TTG. I'm trained to go. Put me in, coach. That's what I be talking to God. Put me in, coach. And so then when we get so, wrapped up in him putting us in, right? Then we actually go in, right? We actually do it and we execute this thing. And then what happens is when God gives us the blessing, he blesses us with the promise. Sometimes we become so involved with the promise that we forget the one who promised it and gave it to us. We forget the one who is the one who is the promise keeper, who gave it to us. Ouch. Right? Because we get so wrapped up in the promise. And I wanted to talk about this because it's a real thing. Like when I sit back and I think about all of this, right? And I think about the story of Abraham and Isaac and how Isaac, came about, right? He was the promised son. Like Abraham had literally been promised this son. And so he had gotten so attached to what God had promised him that God decided to tell him that I need for you to now sacrifice the promise that I've given you, right? The promise that you worked so hard for, the promise that you've been so obedient and you've been so intentional with me for. Y'all, I don't know about y'all, but listen, you worked so hard for this thing only for God to tell you, I need for you to give it back to me. How many of y'all willing to give it back to God? How many of y'all are really willing to really give it back to God? Who does this? And I'm like, God, how you just gonna renege like that, right? That would have been me, right? But I'm thankful that even in that mindset, right, that I've grown, right? Because it's levels to this thing. It's levels to this thing. But I ask questions sometimes. You got to ask questions because if you don't ask the questions, how you gonna get the answers? You see what I'm saying? And God is so awesome that He may not answer your questions right then and there, but He gonna answer it for you in due time. So I'm thankful for that, and I'm mature enough to say that I'd have said that before. Like, God, why you can't just take that back? How you just gonna take that back? How you give it to me and then you want me to give it back to you? But now I'm in more of a season now, right? Because I'm able to receive and I already understand that, okay, God, if you're telling me to do this, that means that you have something, something. That means that you're up to something. That means that you got something even greater for me, right? Because it can't get no better than what I got. And sometimes that's the way we look at it. We say, dang, well, God, I'm in this current situation and you've already blessed me with this. You sure that it can get better than than what I got? And the crazy thing about it is that it can. And I never thought that that was possible. But with God, all things are possible. So now for me, right, I've learned now that I'm TTG. So I'm like, listen, I'm trained to go. But I want to talk to those of you, right, who have your moments just like I do, right? And in this week, all in itself, I was just like Abraham, right? Because I'm like, God, you giving me this thing, you blessed me with this thing, and now all of these different things are happening, and now, and all of these different things is happening. And I felt like in a way, right, that I began to spend more time with the things, right, the promises versus spending the time with God. And that was something that I had to really, and I was like, well, wait a minute. And that was a thought that came in my head. Like, are you spending more time with the promises than the promise keeper, the one who's giving you the promise, right? The promise giver. So the crazy part is for me is that I'm like, okay, well, that was a thought. And so then it came back in my mind. And then so I had to begin to test myself. And I can only imagine what Abraham was going through, right? Because for him, it was like, this is a difficult situation. I can't tell my son that I'm about to go up here and sacrifice him, that he is the living sacrifice. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to do this for him, right? Or tell him this because I know it's going to make him nervous. It's probably going to make him a little scared. But then again, because Abraham had a relationship with God, maybe Isaac just said, you know what? I trust my father, my earthly father, because God has always looked out for him. Our heavenly father has looked out for him. And he's a man of faith and he sees how his dad is. So he trusts that his dad is going to do right by him, right? This is so good, y'all, because I'm telling you, this is what this is what God wants us to do. He wants us to really trust him with it. He wants us to spend time with him. He doesn't want us to get so wrapped up in the promises, right? That we forget about who he is, right? And even in our obedience, and when we really latch on to God, I'm gonna do it, right? And I'm gonna do exactly what it is that you told me to do. And I'm gonna spend some time with you, right? Because you're intentional with what it is that He wants you to do. However, right, even though you're being obedient, because you're now saying, okay, God, I'm giving you this back. And sometimes that's what we have to do. We have to give God back what He's already given us, the promises, because the promises don't even belong to us. They belong to Him. They really belong to Him. They already belong to him, but he's just allowing you to borrow it. He's allowing you to have it, right? In this moment and in this season, right? And maybe it's a season of lifetime and maybe it's a season, right? But either way, he came through with his word and you know that he's not a man, so he's not going to lie. So you know that he has your best interest at heart because he's done it for you before, then you know that he's going to do it again. But go with me here. So I'm talking about the ram in the bush, and I say this because we got to be like Abraham. We got to be able to trust God so much, right? To do what it is that it is that he's told us to do. And Abraham was so obedient that he was ready to literally sacrifice his son. And his son is like, well, where? Like he already knew what time it was. Where's the lamb, Dad? Where's the lamb? He said, God will provide. And he wasn't lying. God will provide. And what he did was he had enough faith to not only believe that God was going to provide, he already knew that all was well, because if God said this and God told me to do it, that means that God is going to make a way for it to be okay. And that's what we have to do, because at the end of the day, God knew in his heart of hearts and in his soul of souls, right, that Abraham didn't want to sacrifice his own son, not the promise that God has given him, right? The promised son that God had given him. He knew that Abraham didn't really want to do this, but he trusted God enough to do it. And God says, you know what? Because you were obedient, I see your love for me. I see that you're not so in love with the promise that you've forgotten about me, that your love, right? That I still have your heart. Even though I've given you the promise, right? You love me more, you love me most, and you realize that I am your number one priority, right? And so, even in this situation, right, God still provided. And I truly believe, right, that we got to be like Abraham, because I'm pretty sure that Abraham, maybe he didn't even notice that there was a ram in the bush, right? Maybe there wasn't even a ram that was in the bush at the time. I don't know. I can't say, right? And I don't even think the story even tells us that there was a ram in the bush before, right? That maybe he didn't even notice. And sometimes we just get so focused on the assignment, right, that God has told us to do, and that's what we're supposed to do. We get so focused on the assignment that God has for us that we just trust that everything is going to be fine. And I had to realize that even in this week, is that it doesn't matter what's going on, right? It doesn't matter what the situation is. It doesn't matter what it looks like. There's always a ram in the bush. That means there's always calmness that's waiting for you, Toya. There's always peace that's waiting for you, sister, brother. You get what I'm saying? Like, y'all, I'm telling you, there's always some peace that's there. It's there for us to grab. There's always a way out. Even when we feel like our back is against the wall, when we feel like things are coming at us and we feel like there's nobody that's there for us, God says there is a ram in the bush. And even sometimes, even in our obedience, because Abraham was obedient to sacrificing his son. And even when we're obedient to sacrificing the promise that God has given us, God is reminding us that it is so, right? And that I got your back. And here is a ram in the bush because of your obedience. Because you thought that I was going to do it this way, but I said, no, baby, I'm going to do it this way. This way is much better. I just wanted to see whether or not if you really trust me. I really wanted to see whether or not if you really love me. I really want to see where your heart is. I really want to see who has your mind, who has your soul. Am I really your number one priority? Do I really mean a lot to you? This is what God is asking us, because our actions should show that. We should be showing God how much we care for him. We should be showing him that we love him no matter what. We should be showing him this. And that's why I say, y'all, we got to be intentional with this thing, because that ram in the bush is real. Listen, God will set you up and put you in a whole situation, okay, where the reality is, right, is that some of us, we put our own selves in a situation, but God will create an escape. He will literally sign you up and put you up with a ram in the bush. And I can only imagine, man, like, seriously, God, you know what? So you mean to tell me I'm out here sacrificing the promise for you, because I want to show you just how much I trust you. Because if you tell me to do this, even though it may look crazy to everybody else, okay, and I got to be the only one out here trusting you, and I got to look crazy, because I look crazy for man before. You see what I'm saying? I'd have been out here looking like a fool for people. You get what I'm saying? That's why I can't be out here looking like a fool for you. So I'll be out here looking like a fool, but knowing goodness well that you mean well by me, that your intentions are not to harm me, but they're to prosper me and they're to take me to the next level. And it's necessary for me to go through the things that I'm going through. So I have to make sure that I'm doing what it is that he says that we got to do. We got to make sure we're doing what he says that we got to do, y'all. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. So I just wanted to just get on here, man, on today, man, just to encourage somebody, just to encourage us. You know what I'm saying? Because y'all, I promise you, when I'm talking to y'all, I'm talking to myself too, y'all. And I'm so thankful for the ram in the bushes. I'm thankful already for all of them that's coming our way right now. I'm thankful for the rams in the bushes, y'all, because I'm telling you, sometimes all God wants us to do is just walk it out. Just go through it. Just do it. Just do it. Just go for it. Don't give up on yourself. Just go for it. Just step out on faith and do what it is that I told you to do, even if you're the only one, even if you may feel like, I don't have all of the resources that I need, but just do it. Just trust and know that there is a plan. That God has a plan, and sometimes your plan ain't God's plan. Because see, God had already told Abraham what to do, but he didn't tell him the full story. He didn't tell him what the whole plan was. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's amazing for me, right? Because I look at it like this. If God did that for Abraham, if God did that for Abraham, I know what he can do for us in today, in 2024. If he did that for Abraham, I know what he will do. I know what he's able to do. I know what he's going to do for us. He's able and willing to do exceedingly and abundantly above all things that we can ever ask for, y'all. He's trying to line us up now for our desires. Some of y'all out there, man, y'all want y'all husbands, y'all want y'all spouses, right? And some of us want the houses. We want all of these materialistic things, right? And the things that are materialistic, those things are gonna fade away. But God says, listen, this word is gonna stand forever. So the thing about it is, y'all, we got to get in that word. We got to make sure that we allow that word to marinate. Because when we're going through these battles and we're going through these things, because y'all, I tell you, y'all, I had a moment this week. And I was like, Lord, I don't even know how I'm going to deal with this thing. I don't even know what's going on. And then God had to remind me of who I was. He had to remind me of who I was, because just in a quick moment, right, my emotions, I almost allowed my emotions to get the best out of me. Y'all, I wanted to call some people, you know what I'm saying? Because they was affecting my situation here. And I'm sitting here like, what in the world is going on? I got to stay prayed up and I got to stay saved. You see what I'm saying? And I literally sometimes have to say that out loud to myself and speak it to myself, because the more I say it to myself, the more my flesh begins to die, because I'm in control of Toya. Nobody else has control over Toya. I don't know about y'all, man, but listen, ain't nobody got no power over me. Ain't nobody got no power over me. Only God can do what I even allow him to do. And I have to submit to him every single day. I have to die every day. This flesh has to die every day. It's hard out here sometimes. Like, sometimes I be wanting to lay hands on people. Y'all don't understand. It's real out here. You see what I'm saying? It's really real out here. Sometimes, y'all, I be wanting to I control my mouth. Y'all, I've gotten so much better with this cussing. When I tell y'all I got so much better with this cussing, oh my God, I've gotten so much better with this cussing. Like, I get to a point now where I use substitutions. Like, I was using substitutions at first for cuss words. Like, I was like, what in the ham sandwich, right? I say stuff like that, right? Versus me actually cussing. And so for me now, it's like I've gotten so much better with that. But people still be trying me sometimes. You get what I'm saying? And so for me, when I say it the proper way and I talk to people the way that I know that I'm supposed to talk to them, it's almost like they still don't understand it, right? And so for me, I felt like cuss words get my point across. You see what I'm saying? But I'm realizing more and more, like, it's new levels to this thing. So you cannot respond the way that you used to respond. Like, you have to grow every day. And this is an everyday thing, y'all. It's not a one-day thing. You don't change overnight. This walk with God, I'm so thankful that God deals with us individually. Because people out here are being judged for who they are. People out here being judged for the things that they do. Like, and what makes you think that you're better than anybody? I know I don't. I don't think that I'm better than anybody. But the crazy thing about it is people will perceive you to make you think that you are better than them because that's what they think, right? They will begin to put their own perceptions of you on them, but that ain't even your business. And I even wrote that earlier this I think I wrote it earlier this week on Facebook. Check that out, y'all. The glow up is. Check me out right there on Facebook. Check me out on Spotify too, y'all. Listen, it's a real thing, but I just wanted to be reminded on today, man. Continue to trust God. Continue to know that God has everything under control. Like even when your back is against the wall, God has everything under control. And there is a ram in the bush for you. I'm telling you, just continue to be prayerful, continue to be diligent, continue to be consistent and persistent in what it is that God has for you, even in the ideas that you think that are small. Continue to trust him in that and know that there is always a way out. There is always a way out. The enemy has no power. He has no declaration over your life. You are in control of you. Nobody else has control over you. God gives us free will. And every day I'm giving him my will. Every day I'm surrendering to him. Every day I surrender to God daily. I need his grace every day. I get new grace, new mercies. We get new grace, new mercies. If you accept him, he's willing to accept you. It's just that simple. That's all. It's not even about a church, y'all. It's not about a building. It's not about a building. It's not about a building. That is not what the church is. The church is you. The church is us. It's us. We are having church even now, just sitting here talking, just being able to sit here and encourage each other. This is what God loves. He loves us to encourage each other. He loves us to be real with each other. He loves us to be down earth to each other. Now, is there different levels to this thing? Absolutely. Do you think that you're better than anybody? Absolutely not. Because we're not. We will never arrive. We will never, ever, ever arrive. I'm just so thankful and grateful for his life, but I'm most grateful for that ram in the bush, y'all. That ram in the bush saved me this week. That ram in the bush, man. I even forgot about the ram in the bush. I was being obedient, just doing exactly what it is that I was supposed to do. And then here come the ram in the bush. Up. That this not even supposed to happen. But I wanted to see whether or not you wanted to do it like this. And I'm like, wow, guys, you worked that thing out. And I was literally about to stress myself out over something that God had already taken care of. He had already taken care of that. Excuse my English. I said taken care of. He had already taken care of the situation. I was getting worked up over nothing. Stop getting worked up over stuff. Stop letting your emotions get the best of you because sometimes guess what happens? That's what happens. And we work ourselves up over nothing. The bills, forget about the bills. Like, yeah, they got to get paid, but they going to get paid. Calm down, relax. Just let God do his thing. You continue to do what you're supposed to do. Be intentional and watch God send you that ram in the bush. That's always a ram in the bush. I love y'all. I'm going to see y'all next week. I put episode 18 on here, but it's actually episode 16. So I will see y'all next week. I love y'all. Listen, we are growing to glow, growing to glow. It's a glow up because we are coming up. You feel me? Okay. Now I love y'all. And I'm just so thankful for y'all, man. I'm just so thankful for all of the encouragement, all of the love. A girl was watching this from Brazil. Shout out to you. I'm just excited about this thing. Share it, share it, share it. Subscribe. And check me out on Spotify. Check me out on Apple Music. Check me out, y'all. Listen, a book is going to be coming soon. Check that out too. More to talk about soon on that. But I'm so excited, y'all, because the Glow Up is doing some real things out here in these streets. And guess what? That's what God wants us to do. We are the church. We gotta be about our Father's business because that's what this is. We grow up to glow up, and that is what it's about. Okay. I love y'all. Until next week. Out. Your girl will see you then. All right, y'all. The Glow Up is. See y'all next week. Bye.